Hi guys, my name is David and welcome back to my channel. Today I am going to be reviewing There Will Never Be a Rainbow by Rod Gilley. This is it's advertised on the cover as being a fantasy horror book, but it's more of a dark fantasy or urban fantasy with elements of horror sprinkled throughout. I did read this book, a big chunk of it once already. I was planning to kind of talk about it as a whole rather than talking about all the individual stories. But then I kind of thought about the stories and I was thinking, well, I couldn't really remember many of them. So I was thinking, well, I'll go back and reread this, and I will do little short clips for all the stories. This will all be spoiler free and be my own thoughts and feelings, so don't forget that, guys. And I just want to say to Rod that even though some of these aren't home runs, some of these I didn't really like that much or think very much of. Don't kind of let that get you down. This is a short story collection. I'm sure that I can read a short story collection by Stephen King, one of my favorite authors, and not all of his stories are going to be home runs. So don't be too disheartened. And also, this is going to be my own honest thoughts about this book. I was sent a copy of this, a free copy by Rod, on my Kindle. Well, he sent a PDF and I put it on my Kindle. So this is going to be my honest thoughts. So kind of take this video, Rod, with a grain of salt. Take this my thoughts as my own thoughts, um, and yeah, just try to run with it, I guess. So with all that out of the way, guys, these are all the clips of all the stories in Rod's book. So the first story is simply called There Will Never Be a Rainbow. And at the start of all the stories, Rod has produced a picture. Sorry, this one's not really good quality. You probably get better quality on the um, physical copy, which you can get this in a paperback version. But and at the bottom of each picture, it has a little blurb saying where the story originated from, whether it's unique to this collection or whether it was published in a separate place. So this story revolves around a woman called Janie who is running from a male assailant. It is raining, there are woods everywhere, and she is desperate to get away. There is a dog which she encounters, like this big, real violent dog, and there's that sense of urgency that she has to get away. That sense of desperation that she has to get away from this, not just this man or this dog, but this whole situation, which isn't really fully explained about what she's running away from. But this story is more to do with what she's running towards. She finds this alleyway which has this old man sitting near a dumpster, and he gives her some wine and some cheese. But we have the opinion that this alleyway is more than just an alleyway in an ordinary city. That I believe that this alleyway is another dimension that our main character found herself in, and she has to try to escape this whole situation. And this man that isn't at all mean to her, he's very nice to her, but she has to try to, yeah, get back to her own world and her own life. I really like this one. More cryptic than I would like, but I really enjoyed it. Good start to the book. I'm going to give it a 4 stars out of 5. The next story is called My Beloved Haunt, and this is the picture for it. I believe that Rod has made these pictures himself. I could be wrong about that. Okay, so this story was
kind of hit and miss for me. It's about this married couple, or this couple that have recently got married, and the husband is a warrior, and he is called off to investigate the camp of one of their enemies that they got to defeat. And I won't say too much because if I do say too much, then I will spoil it. But the husband gets into a battle with a fierce warrior from the opposing side, and he has to get back to his wife. But can he? And can he defeat this um, warrior? And will the wife ever see her husband again? This story was kind of a mixed bag. I would like. I mean, this is kind of like a little snippet of a novel that should be like a big epic fantasy novel. So I couldn't really get the connection between the characters and their kind of conflict with these people, and I couldn't really connect with the world that this story was set in. But with that aside, I did like this one. Um, it did have its flaws. It did drag a bit in places, but overall, a fairly decent story. So I think a 3 stars would be appropriate for this one.
Hi guys, this isn't a check-in. I just wanted to um, say that I'm not feeling very much like reading today. It's not just for Rod's book. I'm really not in the mood to actually read anything. I mean, even I'm currently reading this, um, which I absolutely love the series, and I'm currently on a chapter based around the character that I like. But for some reason, I'm actually not feeling reading today. Hopefully, I'm not getting into a reading slump. I mean, that's gonna suck. Especially going straight into 2025. Um, but when I think about it, I don't feel like doing much of anything. I mean, I'm not even really that bothered about watching anything on TV or watching a film. Um, I'm feeling okay. I'm not particularly tired or anything like that. It's just I don't feel like doing much of anything. Okay, so I am going to at least try to attempt to read. I know it's probably not the best strategy to somewhat force myself to read, but I feel like it's the best thing to do. So I'm going to be reading one more story from Rod's book. If I can read two, that's perfectly fine, but I want to read at least one before the end of the year. That one being called Will You, which is right there. Okay, so this story, I don't want to say too much on this story first off, because if I do, it will give loads of stuff away. It's about a girl who is a escort, and she does all these sexual favors for all these like creatures, these people that have all these supernatural powers and abilities. Like she has um, sexual intercourse with a ghost and a alien to actually names a small handful of them, and and all these sexual acts aren't what we consider them to be. They are unusual sexual requests by her clients, and she is friends with a witch. Is kind of like her pimp, but every time that she comes back from visiting her clients, the witch kind of takes something from her, which she can use for different spells and for her own advantage. This was kind of a mixed bag, as we don't really get much character development. We don't really know or get to know our characters that well. Um, there's no character arc, and they kind of our main character going from client to client is kind of more or less the same thing, but each client is different. So yeah, we've got that, and there didn't really seem to be a satisfying conclusion. Well, for me, there wasn't anyway. It just ended. It was okay. I would rate it a 3 stars.
So the next story is called Blino the Collector. I probably said that a bit wrong. I remember reading this story once before and not enjoying it as much, but we'll see how it goes. Okay, so this one's basically about a painter who paints portraits of women, and he gets this woman to be a model for him, and ultimately the painting becomes more than what it appears to be, and is a way of preserving youth. I will leave it like that. It's got a very like a very vampire type of quality to it. You know, like you'll live young forever and you will never die. More or less the same type of concept. I've never really seen or read rather the portrait of Dorian Gray, but I would imagine that this was a kind of a inspiration for Rod for writing this for writing this story. Um, Me personally, it was okay. Not one of my favorites. Probably the least favorite I've actually read in his collection so far. Um, the story was okay. Writing style was the same as usual. The characters were. I couldn't really connect with any of the characters. Um, it's really short. Um, so I understand that, but I just couldn't really connect with any of the characters or understand any of the characters. So that is why I only rate it a 2.5 stars. So the next story is called Together Forever, and that's the picture there.
Okay, so I'm not sure what this story is about. As far as I could tell, it's about a lady that gets a job at a kind of a medical establishment. She has to train somebody new. There's a moment where she's sexually assaulted, so that was uncomfortable to read. And we find out a little bit about a man that she loved, who I believe was taken from her, who died. And yeah, at the end, she gets uh, somewhat reunited with her lover. This one was okay, not the best. Um, Again, I had trouble connecting with the characters, and I thought the story was slow, a bit boring, and I felt that a lot of the scenes were dragged out far longer than they should have. So yeah, it is what it is. So anyway, I rate this story a 2 stars. The next story is called Fate and Karma.
Okay, so this story was kind of uh, all over the place. Was probably my best way of saying it or explaining it. The overall tone reminded me a lot about an urban fantasy that I read a while ago called Sam and Slim by Richard Kadri. That's the kind of feel that this story gave me. And I suppose if you've read the Dresden Files, then more or less a similar feel and vibes, I suppose. I don't know, I've only read the first book. So this is about a lady that goes to this law firm of sorts to get a divorce from her ex-husband, and she gets into an elevator, which I don't want to say exactly what happens. I mean, I'm not entirely sure myself, but I'll say that she gets transported to another dimension where she can get revenge on her ex for the bad things that he did to her. Um, it's interesting. I'll say that it's got some interesting characters. Um, I feel that that this is probably one of the stories which Rod could have easily like fleshed out and did a whole novel on. But with that said, it wasn't all perfect. Yes, it did outstay its welcome a handful of times, but overall, a decent story. So I'm gonna give it a respectable 3.5 stars. Hi guys, I'm about to read the next story, which I believe is in 2 parts, but both parts are included as one story, and that is called Serenity. You can't really make out the picture in this one, but it's basically I think it's a female's face being covered up by a hand. Um, yeah, you can just about make it out, I think. Okay, so this story is probably, well, not probably, it's the best story that I have read in this collection by a long mile. The others have been kind of anything from good to that's that's okay. This one's about a married couple who move into a house, or a new house, and I believe they go up into the attic and they find this strange mirror standing in the middle of the room. And this mirror has the ability to kind of transport them into a different dimension. And while there, they find out they have to kind of rescue this family member that hasn't been born yet from this entity that wants to kind of absorb their essence, I guess. And the couple very loving, and while in this dimension, they kind of experience a event called a time ripple. This basically means that throughout their time in this dimension, their age is kind of fluctuating. So 1 minute they are young, and then the next minute they're old, and this kind of um, affects the task that they're doing at that specific moment in time. And this time ripple can't be controlled. It's very unstable and very and unpredictable. Then at the end of this story, they have to try to rescue this unborn family member, and yeah, it was really good. I really enjoyed it. Yes, it did stay out. Yes, it did outstay its welcome sometimes. It was in 3 parts. Um, I'm not sure why Rod did it in parts. Um, I mean, the parts could be interpreted as chapters, but if he just took out, the part one, part two, and part three, and just had it one continuous story, it wouldn't have made any difference. But I enjoyed it. I'm gonna rate it a 4.5 stars out of 5. So the next story is called Saint Maul. I think that's how you pronounce it. I'm not even entirely sure. Yeah, that's the image as well. Okay, so I didn't really like this story that much. I thought it had the potential to um, be interesting, but it kind of ended on a really silly um, ending. It's about this art thief that seems very sophisticated in what he does, and he's has this job where he has to steal um, this piece of art. I think it's like this statue of this woman that he has to steal. He goes to the museum and scopes out the location, and um, sees where the security cameras are and all that stuff. And when he goes back to the museum to steal this artwork, he falls in love with the art, and yeah, ends up liking it a little too much. This had potential to kind of um, have this kind of man being portrayed as someone that's got a mental disability in a very interesting way, or could have explored how he has this um, kind of like funny grip on reality. Um, but it just ended up being a very silly ending that was different. It was imaginative, but uh, I didn't really like this story that much. So unfortunately, I've got to rate it a 1.5. Unfortunately, that's what I gotta give it. Hi guys. So the next story is called Fear of the Dark and has a picture of. I'm pretty sure that's supposed to be a tiger's eyes or the eye of the tiger. Yeah. That's the picture.
So this story revolves around our main character called David. Um, great name, I guess. It's always weird to read books where the main character has the same name as you do. So he has a fear of the dark. Um, Not sure whether it's a mental condition or um, a genuine fear of the dark. And he has a wife, and he finds out that he is slowly becoming blind. And there's that kind of fear that David feels like, okay, he has this fear of the dark, and then he's becoming blind, so he's going to be afraid all of the time. Um, and then he has these kind of visions of the book, or the story rather, describes it as a creature, but all we see of the creature is yellow eyes and white teeth. And the creature doesn't really seem to um, cause David any injuries or any harm. At best, it just like gnashes its teeth at David and just gives him like jump scares, I guess. But then um, the creature is what is more than what it appears to be, and David is kind of accused of crimes as a result of this creature. That's probably as far as I want to go with that. This is a story which I think I've heard about somewhere before. I'm pretty sure I've actually read a story with more or less the same concept. I'm just not sure where from. This was okay. Not the best, not the worst. It was decent. I think I'm gonna rate it a 3 stars. So the 10th and final story in this collection is called Little Bird, with a picture of a massive eagle. So this story is a very unique story and um, definitely unusual and very trippy and entertaining. It's about a man who wants to please a god by sending up a bird into the sky to kind of satisfy this god, to kind of prove to this god that he is devoted to him and that he loves his god, and his god is everything to him. So this kind of symbol of this bird going into the sky that he has kind of cared for and released into the open sky is symbolic to him. But this is all well and good when you consider this, but when you find out that basically these birds that this man is throwing over a cliff to attempt to, well, in the hope of them flying into the sky, happens to be young ladies that he has abducted and is absolutely convinced in his twisted, sick mind that they are birds. He doesn't see them as humans or females. He sees them as birds and he treats them as such. I really enjoyed this story. Yes, it could have been cut down a little bit. We really don't find out a lot about the man or his backstory, but we don't really need to. And I think this story had a really satisfying ending. It could have ended a little bit sooner, but Rod kind of, puts a little bit extra thought, to the ending, and I really enjoyed it. So I mean, it wasn't like a home run, the last story, but I enjoyed it for what it was. So I'm going to give it a 3 stars. So that is all the stories I have experienced in Rod Gilley's new book. Hopefully I've done all the stories justice. I tried to keep it all short and concise, and it was interesting going all through these, and it kind of shook my mind in remembering what some of these stories were about. And would I recommend this to a horror fan? If you are a horror fan and you really like reading that genre, um, this probably won't scratch that itch, as a lot of these stories aren't really heavily focused in horror. If you're a fan of something like Dresden Files, or I remember I read the first book in the Sandman Slim series by Richard Kadri. Rod's kind of storytelling and I think his imagination would suit that kind of writing style. In fact, I would really like it if Rod did something kind of like in them settings, like an urban fantasy setting. I think that he would do something really good and really creative with a kind of a detective in a fantasy world. But this is a really interesting book. A lot of the stories were really unique and quirky and different. The endings I didn't really see coming and really surprised me. Yes, the last line of a lot of these stories was the title of the story itself. Um, that was a kind of a quirky gimmick. It was cute once or twice, but not. I don't think it happened in all the stories, but I think it must have done. But yeah, if you want to read something by a unknown author, um, and show your support, and if you've been intrigued by anything I've said about any of these stories, then I would definitely recommend this book. You can get it on Kindle and as a paperback as well. I will also link Rod's YouTube channel down below in the description. He's a very laid back guy. He's a really cool guy as well. So yeah, let me know if you read this book. What did you think about it? Are you planning to read it based on anything I've just said? And yeah, thank you again, Rod, for sending me a copy of your book. And sorry that I had to kind of go back and reread it, but I felt that that was probably the best thing for me to do. So that's been my video, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed it. And with all that out of the way, I'll see you on my next one.